I have done it. I have created the ultimate Fire Emblem Heroes unit. Let us see. Let us embrace the ultimate and the unit that will kill everything. I hope there's nothing that can actually beat this. I did spend a lot of money on it. Oh. Uh-oh. That's a problem, isn't it? Hey guys, Akariss here. Welcome to a brand new Fire Emblem Heroes video. So, in today's video, probably long requested, but finally happening, I'm going to cover pretty much some pretty good Aether Raids investments. I'm gonna call this a tier list, but don't really think of it as something that is hard facts, because realistically, the meta changes not every 2 weeks, but definitely every time a mythic comes out, there's a huge shift in what works and what doesn't. At least kind of. To be honest, most of these picks have worked for a long time since their release, so if you make an investment like this, you can stay pretty confident that it will last. So, you can probably watch this video a couple months, maybe even a year down the road, and I'm pretty sure things will still be good. For example, Aversa has pretty much been a good unit since the beginning of Aether Raids, and still is. And units like Kronia have been good since she pretty much came out. So a lot of these options should remain good, because this video is based on strategies, not necessarily on the units that compose those strategies. I will cover those units, and I'll tell you why they're the best of the best. And hopefully this will help you make some investment decisions, give yourself more success. I'm going to cover both pay to win and F2P options. What I mean is literally saving orbs for the best units, or paying for it, whatever, and the F2P equivalents, units you can merge at 3 to 4 star but require premium fodder. So use that as a basis on what you want to do next, and possibly give yourself a good head start in overcoming any sort of challenge that you have in Fire Emblem Heroes. There are 4 predominant strategies in offense, AR offense. That is obviously tanking, Vantage, Gale Force, and Hidden Run. All of them are actually pretty good strategies, and honestly, if I was to recommend it, you should have a variety of strategies when going into your plays. You should have the preparation needed to handle all of these things. So make sure that you do. 5 teams, use them to your advantage. You don't have to have every strategy, but you should have most of them, because there is not really any defense that can cover every single unit and every single strategy. So the more options you have, the better your position and ability to play into these will be. So with that being said, one last point. I'm not covering support units in this video. This is strictly the carry units. So if you think about it, double mythic, carry, support unit. If you are actually very merged up on mythics, then you have 3 carries and 3 mythics and a carry unit. You don't even have the space for support, because the 5th unit should be your bonus. Alright, so that being said, let's go on to number 1, which will be tanking. For reference, the blue star, which you see on Forma Souls, is indicated by the pay to win options, meaning 5-star exclusives that can be merged up. The gold star there is for units you can merge up using Grails or the Gacha. And of course, anything below is pretty much, those are Askers, so Askers or OC units that have rotating bonus. And finally, the last one there is just your favorite units. Because here's what it comes down to. In tanking, there are some really good premium options. Not everything is covered here, but these are some of the best units that you can use for tanking. What I want to say is, if you're going to basically build a premium tank with tons of orbs, Bike is still hands down one of the best units you can do here. Covered in, well, that's Norn actually, but there's Bike. If you want to look at the best option for tanking, it's still going to be pretty much Bike. Despite a lot of units and strategies and even defense teams trying to counter him, a combination of null follow-up, Lancina behind him, and an HP seal puts him above HP thresholds like Panic Manor. He has tons of speed if supported properly. The hardy bearing doesn't even work on him, because again, if you speed stack him using Lancina buffs and avoiding debuffs and such on him, make sure that units soak shrines from him, he's going to be in a really good spot to tank almost like every team. You know, you pretty much need units that hard counter bike more than once to really beat him. So when it comes to premium tanks, Bike is pretty good. He doesn't necessarily have to be plus 10. He could still even be really strong in mid merges 5, 6, and 7. Very difficult unit to overcome and definitely worth your orbs if you already have a mid merged. However, the null follow-up build is important and speed IVs are important with speed support. That is imperative. A lot of people use them with null C disrupt. That's a mistake. He's good at covering those dazzle teams and fire sweep teams if you see them, but realistically, null follow-up is super important to stop units like Elwood from basically denying his double, and to make sure that he avoids hardy bearing, which is his biggest weakness. So Ike, really good premium tank, no surprise there. I will cover Norn as well. So thanks to Spendthrift Bow, she's actually really good. You have like a unit who has high stats and a unit that is ridiculous when it comes to overall just every like point of stats in there, like res, defense, speed, attack, all good. With triple mythics, she actually reaches above 70, and that makes her a good standalone unit. Lancina behind her can be used for healing, so the Spendthrift negative effect doesn't even matter. And that's, you know, she pretty much needs to be like a ranged tank, meaning because you don't have close flow or close counter, which are alternative builds, you just want to get, you know, most enemy teams, they have ranged nukes. So Norn is the choice there to pretty much handle that sort of thing. Finally, to cover the last thing here, which would be Shereena, I wanted to give a notable point for the bonus units. We know for a fact that bonus units from the Askers, Alphonse, Anna, and Shereena, and Fjorm as well, rotate in as long as Fjorm is in water season. These are still really good tank units because they pretty much become plus 10 whenever their season happens, and the most important thing is they enable you to bring another support. So that could be Brattle Fjorm, Corin behind, whatever. Alphonse, Anna, and Shereena are all really good tanks when they get plus 10 HP and plus 4 to all stats, believe it or not. Summoner support, ally support, and additional support cannot be understated, and they do perform really well. I have used Shereena myself multiple times in her bonus seasons, and she has become staple, very strong tank. Finally, offense is not so oppressive that you cannot use your favorite unit. I want to make this clear. Despite me covering a tier list, you literally can invest into any unit you want for tanking and some of these other strategies and make it work. That's why I have basically a bunch of random units down there at the bottom, because if you have a favorite and you invest them into tanking, you definitely can make it work with some good gameplay. So don't be afraid to just follow this, and if you don't follow this, think you're gonna fail. It's not true. I use Ashnard. He's not actually that good, but I make him work. So don't be afraid to do that. Moving on. The next strategy I want to talk about is Vantage. Now, Vantage is interesting because it's probably one of the better ones, but maybe it's difficult to understand if you haven't done it a lot. What I want to say about this strategy is that once you get the feel for it, once you get the practice down for it, it's probably one of the best strategies to use, because it's hard for a defense team to properly counter it without realistically countering it with tons of hardy bearing sweeps and dazzle effects. And even that might still not work. So Vantage, probably one of the best strategies, or along with tanking being like the two most consistent ones that I use, and a lot of people do. So think about this one clearly. Now, what I think is interesting, brand new pay-to-win option is Mia. Harmonious Mia. Not honestly the best choice, but an interesting one, is the fact that if you give her Broadleaf Fan, she becomes one of the fastest and highest attack units in the game, because that's just her stat spread. But the interesting thing is as well that she's 3 movement. A 3 movement Vantage unit gives you more play options. You don't need to smite them in. You might just be able to snipe just from the ability to move 3 spaces. This isn't always an advantage, especially when you run into units that have effectiveness, which unfortunately she is. The ability to also buff yourself in attack and speed using the dual skill is also a nice thing. It means you don't necessarily need attack and speed tactic or attack speed link or hone cav, whatever you choose. You can kind of choose when to buff how to buff, and make your options there. You can even buff post-attacking, which is something a lot of people forget and really useful, because if she gets panicked, then you can just buff after attacking instead of on the beginning of the turn, or a link forcing a buff. So that's an interesting thing. I just wanted to mention it here. Leila here is at the top just from her high attack, but she's not necessarily the best option. Those are just the pay-to-win premium options. They're not always the best. I'd equal them sometimes even being as good as the F2P options. With that being said though, we do have Chad, who I really haven't talked about in other videos, but deserves a mention here. Chad has enough HP, just like Gangrel, who I covered in another video, to dodge Panic Manners and Tackle Shrimp. This could always change, but it's still important because not everyone always levels up those buildings. So having a unit with 71 HP is very good. Broadleaf Fan, unfortunately it's premium, but you can get away with alternatives for sure. Ouch Pouch still being one, and if you just want to use the Broadleaf effect, you could also invest in Matthew. So those are units definitely covered here. With that being said though, HP being super important, bulk being important, and the flexibility and strategies not necessarily needing a Broadleaf Fan, Gangrel's preference weapon, Cronia's preference weapon, of course, being really good, and Cronia can use Disarm Trap, for instance, makes these very solid choices for Vantage strategies. Now, I wanted to definitely give you a mention for the Blade Tomes, because the Blade Tome Vantage strategies are still fairly popular, but they have very strong weaknesses, and that is basically lull skills. Lull skills are all over the place, and if you run into them, Blade Tomes become a liability. On top of that, they are colored as opposed to colorless. Colorless have equal matchups across the board, and Tomes can pretty much get screwed over by just uneven colors on a defense team. For example, if you use Darge and you see like 3 blue units, you'll have probably some issues against that. Also, among that fact is definitely some units just have like lull to everything. There's definitely those units. I mean, there's Larcy, I think. There's Julia, Divine Nagas, and Dull Range, which people forget exists, but definitely some very, very hard counters there. Vantage strategies that use Broadleaf, for instance, are countered by like somewhat Healing Tower, Restores, and Harsh Commands, but they aren't refined enough on defense to truly matter and still make them really good strategies. Finally, as mentioned in the tanking strategy, the funny part here is any dagger can work with Broadleaf Fan, so if you do get it and you still want to use your favorite, give them Broadleaf Fan and you'll probably still overcome all odds on offense in most cases. Moving on, got our Gale Force strategies. Now, this is a huge list, and it's hard to cover everything in here, but I will say the most consistent Gale Force strategies basically come down to using air, right there, and units who have special acceleration. So of course Valoria comes to mind, and I didn't feature Elwood here, and I probably should have. He would be in the row, of course, with the F2P units, but I'll give him a build to talk about him. So Air is definitely one of the best Gale Force units, even though she doesn't have Gale Force. That might become a little bit of a confusion topic for you, but it's realistically not. He has Fury and Lithierberg. Lithierberg, 4 recoil damage, Fury, 6. 2 engagements, 1 dance with Peony, 20 damage, and she's exactly in Wings of Mercy range. So with the build feature there on the left, you'll see that with Disarm Trap, you don't worry about trap placements. You get 2 pretty easy snipes considering her offensive stat spread, combined with a Bolt Tower especially, and a perfect Wings of Mercy range for other units to follow up. And for this, you can use units, of course. You can pretty much use any unit here. Like, literally all of them have some value. Units with special acceleration, though, have the biggest advantage. Like Navarre, for instance, and Valoria. Those units, definitely super strong. NY Alphonse gets a mention. Dual Ephraim for mobility. They're also deserving of those spots. Feature Valoria here, not even with much merges, because you just Wings of Mercy in. She has her own form of special acceleration, and she engages those Gale Force strategies. Dancers are also really nice, especially if they get special accelerated. Infantry Pulse comes to mind, and that's why the Askers are featured here. One thing I definitely want to mention, though, is that Gale Force as a strategy doesn't actually need probably as many merges as tanking or Vantage strategies. Tanking strategies especially want every single merge possible on your unit, so they are very high investment. And a Vantage strategy wants the HP and the attack stats, so a lot of merges are still valuable there. But with a Gale Force strategy, you don't necessarily need as much investment. You can definitely get away with lower merge units, but you need specific units, and that's why these strategies are not that consistent, because you need like Curtains, or you need Valoria, or you need NY Alphons, or you need Leaf, or you need Edelgard, or you need Disarm Trap on air to make it consistent, or you need Navarre and he needs specific fodder, Infantry Pulse for instance. So Gale Force is lower merge investment but higher skill investment or specific unit. With that being said though, of course, I wanted to cover Elwood, which didn't get a mention in the list here. He definitely should be there. I just decided to leave him out for whatever reason. Elwood's an interesting topic because he gets basically special fighter effect on his weapon. So combined with Cook and Pulse for charge, he pretty much has the Gale Force on everything he engages on, and you really just want to stack speed on him. You don't actually want high attack or the highest attack, because if you one-shot, then what happens here is you don't get the Gale Force, or he needs a dance to get it. So Elwood definitely deserves a mention. All the other units can work in one way or another. Claire and Sheeta have Flashing Blade for flyers, which you cannot do otherwise. Donnie with Hone Lance, I covered him in the Weapon Refined video if you're curious about that. Curtains on any blue Lance unit works, but Effie gets a mention because of Gold Fighter Brave Lance, for instance, can work really well. Leaf has the Gale Force strategy as well in his weapons, so that makes him unique. Edelgard has Raging Storm, so as long as they're season based, they're really good. The Bylets have ways to overcome guard or special fighter effects, so the list goes on. Gale Force is very flexible and probably one of the most interesting and most fulfilling strategies to do, and I've done it a few times, you know, successfully, and it's nice to have that as a backup strategy, because most teams do not account for this, and therefore you should have it as a backup, because it doesn't require high merges, it just requires the right units at the right time, and it feels good when you have them. With that being said though, finally, probably the least common strategy in my opinion is Hit and Run. And the reason for it is because there's just not that many good units for it. I've considered even talking about healers in here, but honestly the lack of reposition or drawback really holds them back. Anyways, the best Hit and Run unit is gonna be Leila without a doubt. Leila gets to attack into enemy units for free. In Light Season, combined with Peony, and Peony that runs aerobatics, this is ridiculous. So essentially, Peony just needs to be 2 spaces within Leila's engage. Leila needs Disarm Trap. She hits units for free because of her weapon. And then she swaps with Peony. Her turn is done. She's great. Peony with aerobatics can 3 movement range back behind her. She then moves again after dance and draw back. So combining this strategy, you just pretty much knocked out a frontline unit and gotten some impeccably good drawback range using only 2 units. So your other units are free to smite, reposition, and such. Combined with Mila and Peony, for example, this is pretty much uncounterable. Like this is one of the best strategies in the game, but it requires again specific setups, and again, not everyone has Leila or Disarm Trap or Mila and etc, but it is super strong of a strategy, and definitely would recommend if you can put it together. With some practice, of course. You know, the best way to do this is, of course, mock battle your friends, or hit up the Discord, of course, and ask people, you know, can I play your teams, and try these strategies for yourself with no cost for you to do it. All the other hit and run units featured here are pretty much simple to talk about. It's pretty much using a high movement unit, hitting, dancing, running back. That's really all it is. The reason that you'll see drawback on someone like Rolf here is because if you dance him twice, he drawbacks twice from the back. As opposed to reposition, the dancer gets behind, it's harder to dance him in front because he'd be in front. But with drawback, double dancers means you draw back once, dance him, and draw back again for further range back. So that is my preferred option there. Now you'll see like HP attack or HP skills chosen on Hit and Run. The thing is, Hit and Run doesn't need the highest of offensive stat spreads. It helps, but dodging stuff like tactics rooms and panic manners is more important. So Rolf here definitely just needs to go in, snipe a key unit, and just run away as fast as he can. Essentially what the strategy is, of course. So high offensive stat spread, or a brave weapon, of course. But I don't like brave unless it could screw you up because of lower HP. A refined weapon, of course, has more. But yeah, so anything works for this. Like any range cav works for this. So choose who you want, get some HP, or make sure they at least get some kills on units you'd expect. Of course, without a doubt, I wanted to mention Leaf. He's really good for this. He can be used in Gale Force strategies. He can actually be used in Vantage strategies too. Don't think I mentioned him there, but he definitely can with close counter Vantage, Gale Force, and Hit and Run. So super flexible, but he does require different builds based on what you want him to do because of his Gale Force, range Gale Force thing that is unique to him. So that pretty much covers everyone I think I wanted to talk about in this video. One thing, again, that I will close it off with is, despite me mentioning all these units, you definitely can get away with using less invested units, less invested strategies, and your favorite units in any of these strategies for the most part. Of course, you're not going to Gale Force with a dragon, because you can't do that, but you definitely can, let's say, tank with dragons. Wouldn't really recommend it against Thrasir, but hey, there is Fallen Corrin, you know, at the beginning for tanking, and she can probably get through effective damage. And there's definitely some units that can just straight up not care about effective damage, maybe if they just have a lot of bulk. So, you know what? Pick what you like and play with it, make it work, and then be that guy that says, you know what? I did it using my favorite. And that's cool. That's cool for you, and plenty of people would enjoy it. So thank you guys for watching. Remember, this video should still be useful even months from now, because realistically, these strategies, these units will still be the ones to use. It's just how it works in a strategy game. Give the video a thumbs up, comments below what you think, what you use. I want to hear what strategies you use, which units you use, and how you've made it work. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Much love. Peace.